Yes, well, I'm pleased to take a call in this third reading speech, and I think most of the issues have been canvassed here, but I too want to put on record that this bill in 2004 was really leading-edge legislation, and I worked with Dr Paul Hutchison at the time, and Sue Kedgley was on the Select Committee, and we were very aware that technology was moving faster than those in the clinical field, and that there was a real need at that time to look at the environment that needed both policies, regulation and the law. And so I want to acknowledge Di Yates for this was a members' bill, which was quite remarkable to have such a leading-edge piece of legislation come forward as a members' bill, and want to acknowledge her and put it on the record. That was the first IVF baby was actually, I think it's about 26 years ago, and so New Zealand wasn't long after the first IVF baby born in the world. I think we were about 4 years later that we developed the same technology in New Zealand and started to move very fast, because New Zealand clinicians are very nimble in the field to pick up global trends. There is and at the time of the bill, it is amazing to think now, from 2004 to 2010, 6 years later, that there really are minor amendments to the bill. We always said that we'd come back, have a look at the bill, and really this didn't come from the field of clinicians themselves, the cause for this amendment. It came from, I understand, a legal opinion that went to the Minister seeking clarification, and I understand the Health Select Committee worked really well together again on this bill. There was another issue that I'd like to raise that I'm pleased that is maintained in this bill and wasn't knocked out, and that was the provision of the Advisory Committee to issue guidelines and promulgate guidelines. And that was something, when we first discussed the bill, was of an issue for us, because we thought guidelines weren't developed at that stage, needed to be developed to keep up with this real rapid trend in IVF. And it's great to see that the guidelines remain enabled as part of the Advisory Committee function, because that was very important for the Ethics Committee to be advised on. Difficult to put guidelines into primary legislation, but the right to review guidelines and keep them current is still here. I think this is an issue for people. The research is moving rapidly. I read research just a couple of weeks ago that fresher gametes actually may give greater growth and height. We never heard of that when we considered this bill in 2004. So you can see how the technology really ramps along, and we learn about best practice and safety of practice and quality of practice in this field. This is a good amendment. I think at the time we always felt it was 10 years and never retrospective from the date in 2004. And there were issues, and there are some interesting issues when we talk to a younger generation of young women like Nikki Kay and others like my daughters, who say, I may not have found the perfect partner yet with which to have a child, so I'm going to put my eggs on ice. And I think, heavens, that's something that we wouldn't even consider, and I can see Georgina looking bemused, but this is how young people use the market and health research and health practice now to make decisions. Well, in case by the time I might be 38 or 40 and I might be a bit over the edge by the time I go into looking at having a child, so I'll put an egg on ice now. It'll be pretty fresh when it gets thawed, and those are things that we don't even think of as legislators. The mind boggles really about where technology could go in the future, and all of us at the time, I remember Di Yates being very concerned about cloning of the human embryo, and that was something that we kept at top of the mind too, as something that would be something banned in New Zealand. So this bill, I think, cheers to those who worked on the 2004 legislation, got it pretty right. Great that we get legal opinions to say you need to keep up with advice or get clarification, and so we're very happy to support this bill. One of the things that I was on the Select Committee, I was called on one day and the committee was talking about this grace period of 6 months for storage before disposal of the gamete and storage, and I think that's sensible. If in 6 months' time you haven't found the donor of either the sperm or the egg, then by then I think disposal is probably perfectly acceptable, but we thought 6 months felt a sensible time, and I wonder if in 6 years' time we're back and saying we need to have some more amendments on this bill. I'm sure we will, because the technology race is ahead of legislators in the clinical field. So congratulations to all those who work in this field. At the time, I remember the environment was rather scared of this legislation, even only in 2004. They were timid. They were cautious about the futures and how fast we were going into the future. But again, New Zealanders are seen as quite leading edge in our approach here to human-assisted reproductive technology. I congratulate the practitioners and all those in the field, and we support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.